And we are at chapter 42 of Genesis, and that's on page 258. 258 if you have the eights coming too much. So you remember, as we looked at last time, Joseph's amazing rise to power in Egypt. First, he was able to interpret the dreams of the baker and the cupbearer, and then whisked out of prison, brought before Pharaoh, explains his dreams as well, and is appointed second in command over all of Egypt. The question is, what's going on back at home with his brothers and his father? The last time we saw them, the brothers were presenting this beautiful coat to the father and saying, "Look at this. Is this your son's coat?" And the father wailed and mourned, and that's where they were. So now we're in chapter 42. And when Jacob saw there were no food rations to be had in Egypt, he said, "Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I'm getting ahead of myself. No, okay. Well, Jacob saw there were the food rations, not no food rations. That's the problem. He saw that there were food rations to be held in Egypt. He said to his sons, "Why are you just looking at one another? Like, why aren't you doing something?" Uh, he says, "I hear that there are rations to be had in Egypt. Go and procure rations for us that we may live and not die." And we have a sense here that they don't seem to understand how dire the circumstances are. And they're standing around, they're impotent. So Jacob takes charge and he says to his sons, "Go to Egypt and get us some food." And as we look at verse 3, we're on chapter 42 again. 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to get grain rations in Egypt. For Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, since he feared he might meet with disaster. So 10 go and not Benjamin. And you wonder, why is this exactly? Does he suspect that there was some kind of foul play with the brothers? Is it just that this is the only child he has left, the only connection to Rachel, his beloved wife? He's lost Joseph and he doesn't want to lose Benjamin. And so the sons of Israel were among those who came to procure rations, for the famine extended to the land of Canaan. And so there's this mass of refugees who are coming to buy food. Joseph was the vizier, I guess that's how you pronounce that, I'm not sure, of the land, and it was he who dispensed rations to all the people of the land. This seems a little strange because there are all these people, and is Joseph really himself personally going to be standing there? Well, of course, the story wouldn't work if we didn't see him in this role. And anyway, his brothers come and bow low to him, their faces to the ground. So this is the dream again being fulfilled. And Joseph saw his brothers and he recognized them, but he acted like a stranger to them. And here we get again this idea of recognizing, and do you recognize this as your son's, as your son's garment and all of that? We keep having these issues of recognition. He acts like a stranger to them, as if he didn't know them. And he says, "Where are you from?" and they say, we've come from the land of Canaan to procure food. And though Joseph recognized him, they did not. He recognized his brothers. They did not recognize him. And so, recalling the dreams he had dreamed about them, Joseph said, "You are spies that you have come to see the land in its nakedness." And so, the idea that he remembers, he sees them, it all comes back to him. You know, you can imagine Joseph he's been in Egypt for years, and it's a part of him that perhaps he's forgotten or tried to forget, and now it all comes back to him. And so he responds, "You are spies. You have come to see the land in its nakedness," right? You're not just here to buy food. Now, why would he think this, or why would it be reasonable for him to accuse them of being spies? I think the thing is that there are 10 of them, you know, and why are they coming together? And of course, he knows they're not spies, but it's at least on the surface of it slightly plausible. And they say to him, "No, truly we have come to procure food. We are all sons of the same man. No, we're not a group of spies. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies. You've got us completely wrong." And he said to them again, "You have come to see the land in its nakedness." And they reply, "We, your servants, were 12 brothers, the sons of a man in the land of Canaan. The youngest, however, is now with our father, and one is no more." Again, this odd reference to Joseph. He doesn't say he's dead. They don't say he's dead. And indeed, they don't know that he's dead. Right? He's lost to them. They don't know. He is no more a part of the family. And Joseph again says to them, "It is as I have told you, you are spies. By this you will be put to the test. Unless your youngest brother comes here, by Pharaoh, you shall not depart from this place. Let one of you go and bring your brother while the rest of you remain confined, that your words may be put to the test. Whether there is truth in you, else by Pharaoh, you are nothing but spies." And he confined them in the guardhouse for 3 days. You can imagine this 3-day period. Joseph wants to see his brother, his only full brother. Maybe he suspects that his brother also has come to harm. The jealousy may well extend to the favoritism, the jealousy may well have extended to him as well. So then, on the third day, Joseph says, "Do this, and you will live. I'm a God-fearing man. If you're honest men, let one of your brothers be held in your place in detention. The rest of you go and take home rations for your starving house." So he let them sit with this for 3 days, thinking that they're going to be imprisoned, not knowing whether their father will even release Benjamin to the person who gets sent back. And if not, they'll just languish there for years and years. But now Joseph says, "No, you can go. Just one of you has to stay. And you have to bring me your youngest brother, that your words may be verified." And they did accordingly. They said to one another, "Alas, we are being punished on account of our brother, because we looked on his anguish, yet paid no heed as he pleaded with us." So they've been carrying guilt over this all these years. And not only has this brought it all back to Joseph, it's also brought it all back to them. And they have a sense that all of this is a kind of divine payback for what they did to Joseph. Also, note that it's a little bit different here from the way it was when we had a description of what happened. There's a little new information. We looked on at his anguish, yet paid no heed as he pleaded with us. We didn't see that in the original account. This is a little bit more compressed. That was a little more compressed. We have this idea that Joseph is begging them, pleading with them. And as you may recall, what they did was to go off and have lunch. They left him there in the most callous way. And Reuben says, "Didn't I tell you do no wrong? But you paid no heed. Now comes the reckoning for his blood." Right. The reckoning for his blood suggests, yes, maybe he is dead. And we have throughout Genesis this idea that the blood of the dead cries out for recompense. Right. So it's time to pay the piper. And they didn't know that Joseph understood, for there was an interpreter between him and them. And so this we didn't know yet, but apparently this whole dialogue where he accused them of being spies and so on is all being done through an interpreter. And I think that's significant because if they had heard his voice, perhaps they would have recognized him. Unclear, but there's this distance between them. You imagine this ruler, and now there's the interpreter speaking to them. He turns away from them and weeps. This is the first time that we see Joseph crying, and we're going to see it 3 times. This being overcome with emotion because he hears that they feel guilty. It's that they've been carrying this guilt. He came back to them, spoke to them. He took Simon from them, Shimon, and he had him bound up before their eyes. He has him tied up. They see it. And Joseph gives orders to fill their bags with grain and return each one's money to his sack and gave them provisions for the journey, and this was done for them. And so they loaded their asses and their rations, and they departed from there. All right, I'm just going to open it up at this point for questions or comments, if anyone has anything on this first section, the brothers in Egypt. Anything at all? Yes, Andy. Unmute, yeah.
Yeah, that's such. Now, it's just surprising to me that after all these years, he didn't. I know it comes later, but he doesn't ask. Joseph doesn't ask about his father. He just, I guess, the fact that they say the man is back home with the child. He's alive, but I guess that in other words, you think he'd say, "But how is he? How's he doing?"
Right. I think
Without revealing who he is. Without revealing who he is.
it would be a little strange for this Egyptian ruler to be asking such questions, I think, and revealing of himself. He really doesn't know. I mean, part of what Joseph may be thinking is, why hasn't he sent for me? There has to be they were extremely close. And all of this happened and no word at all. And when Joseph does reveal himself, he says, "Is my father still alive?" Suggesting he really didn't trust them and suggesting that something could have happened to him as well. Anyone who would do that to their brother, who knows? At any rate, he stays in role, to do more, to ask more about the well-being of their father might seem a little strange. Barry.
Thank you.
So the brothers do have money to despite their famine.
Yes, yes. The problem is there's no bread to buy. It's not, and we'll see when they come back that they have other things too. Um, but no matter how much wealth you have, if there's no food, and the prices will, of course, rise and rise and rise, but you have this sense that they're not impoverished. Remember, Jacob had an enormous amount of wealth um, that had been passed down to him, and he earned himself when he was with Laban. So it doesn't seem like money is the issue.
And they also had the money they got by selling Joseph,
Yes, they got,
because that was years ago, you know.
and I think that's important though, because it was silver. Uh, and we'll see now that a lot of the story has to do with silver. They try to get rid of the silver, and it keeps coming back to them. And if you're feeling guilty already, right, you feel like somehow this is payback, and then every time you'd spend the money, it winds up back with you. That also plays on them, I think, this sense of eeriness about this encounter. Okay, anything else? Yeah.
Do we know why Joseph selected Simeon to stay?
No, it's not clear. I don't think I can look back to the
I saw something in Hertz that said he conspired. He was the one who conspired to kill him. I don't know if that's a midrash or not, but
back, and it may be. Um, so I'm just looking back to Vanishev and no, it's not here. So
Okay, that's fine.
but it's an obvious question, and you could understand why the midrash, right? The rabbis would sort of why Simeon, right? So more than that, I can't really say. Okay, anything else? Okay, so we're gonna pick up, and we are now at verse 27. And as one of them was opening his sack to give feed to his ass at the night encounter, he saw the money right there in the mouth of his bag. And he said, my money has been returned. It is here in my bag. And their hearts sank. And trembling, they turned to one another, saying, what is this that God has done to us? Really, they're in a sense being tortured here. How could that be? The Egyptians wouldn't give our money back. So somehow, again, this silver that they paid, now it's silver that keeps coming back. When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had befallen him, saying, the man who is the Lord of the land spoke harshly to us, accused us of spying. We said to him, we are honest men. We have never been spies. There are 12 of us brothers, sons by the same father. One is no more, and the youngest is now with her father in the land of Canaan. Pretty much word for word what they said. But the man who is the Lord of the land said, by this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me and take something for your starving households and be off. And bring your youngest brother back to me, that I know you're not spies. I will then restore your brother to you, and you will be free to move around in the land. And as they were emptying their sacks, there in each one's sack was his money bag. When they and their fathers saw their money bags, they were dismayed. So now we see, first of all, they saw the money in one sack. Now, as they're unloading, everyone has money in his sack. And as they're doing it, Jacob sees it, and their father Jacob says to them, "It is always me that you bereave. Joseph is no more. Shimon is no more, and now you would take Benjamin," right? So there's this assumption that two things. First of all, he seems to be blaming them for Joseph, right? In some sense, maybe only as simple as I sent Joseph to find you, and he is no more. Or maybe he has a sense that that they had something to do with Joseph's disappearance and probable death. So he says, these things always happen to me. There's a little bit of self-pity here. And Reuben says to his father, "You may kill my two sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my care, and I will return to you." This is ridiculous. Why, it's hyperbolic, but it's more than that. He says, if I don't bring your son back, you can kill two of your grandchildren. Yeah, this tells us something about Reuben, who is not going to speak again. And the one who will now take over and who we will see front and center is Judah, right? And going back to this idea that he was really the head guy, the lead brother, we really see it here, even though Reuben was the firstborn. So, chapter 43, the famine in the land was severe, and when they had eaten up all their rations which they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go get us some more food." Right? And Judah said,
Rabbi, you skipped verse 38.
yeah. I'm sorry. What do you, one more time?
So verse 38, but Jacob said, "My son will not go down."
Yeah, we're just about there.
Yeah.
We're at
I mean,
chapter
the
38.
end of 30,
The end of
42.
what chapter?
40,
Yeah,
well,
yeah, no,
42. Yeah.
I'm getting there. Right, that's
Okay.
exactly where we are.
Okay.
All right, so Reuben says, "You can kill my sons," but he said, "My son must not go down with you. His brother is dead. He alone is left." So there's something very telling about this. In Hebrew, it says, "Lo Yered B'ni," my son shall not go with you. There is this sense of my real son. You remember this favoritism for Rachel's children, post Joseph. It's not just that it's one of the sons, it's the one he wouldn't let go. And he says, he will not go to you. If he meets with disaster on the journey you are taking, he will send my white head down to Sheol in grief. Similar to what he said when he looked at the cloak and thought that Joseph was dead. The idea of meeting with disaster on the journey, after all, is what happened to Joseph, as far as his father knows, that he was torn by wild beasts. But the famine was severe, and they had eaten all their rations which they had brought from Egypt. Their father said to them, "Go and procure some food for us." But Judah said to him, "The man warned us, 'Do not let me see your faces unless your brother is with you. If you let our brother go with us, we will go down and procure food for you. If you will not let him go, we will not go down." But the man said to us, "Do not let me see your faces unless your brother is with you." So they said, "We're not doing it. It's not going to work. We're going to put ourselves in danger. We're not doing it." And Israel said, "Why did you serve me so ill?" He says, "This is your fault, right? Why did you and tell the man that you had another brother?" They replied, But the man kept asking us about our family. Is your father still living? Have you another brother? And we answered him accordingly. How were we to know that he would say, bring your brother? And Judah said to his father, send the boy in my care. Let us be on our way, that we may live and not die, you and we and our children. So this is exactly what Jacob had said to them, that we may live and not die. He said it to them when he first sent them down. And now Judah is saying it to him. Right? We're not going to sit around wringing our hands, but this is the condition, that we live and not die. And he says, I will be a surety for him. You may hold me responsible. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, I will stand guilty before you forever. So here he's taking this leadership role, but it's not like what Reuven said. You can kill my children. I will bear the guilt. I will take responsibility. What the implications of that, not at all clear. We don't know what he means. We just know that he accepts this responsibility and therefore a kind of a deep estrangement from his father and a certain guilt about it. For we could have been there and back twice if we had not dawdled. And this is kind of like, Jacob says to them, why did you tell this man this? And now Judah is saying to him, we could have been there and back, right? There's a certain back and forth here of blame. First, they're being blamed for what they said, and now he's saying, it didn't have to be this way. And then their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, do this. Take some of the choice products of the land in your baggage and carry them down as a gift to the man. Some balm, some honey, gum, ladanum, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Right? And take with you double the money, carrying back with you the money that was replaced in the mouths of your bags. Perhaps it was a mistake. So it's really unclear here what exactly they are supposed to take back. There are two ways to read it. One way to read it, which is how Rashi reads it, is to say, take back the money and double it. So in other words, 3 times the original amount. And the other is to say, take back your money plus that amount again. It may be, if it's the second reading, it may just be that food probably has become even more costly. He wants to make sure that they have enough money to procure the grain. And then finally, he says, take your brother too. This is the hardest thing. He leaves it to the end. You can imagine his voice choking as he says it. Take your brother too, and go back at once to the man. And may El Shaddai dispose the man to mercy towards you, that he will release to you your other brother as well as Benjamin. As for me, if I am to be bereaved, I shall be bereaved. So he accepts it. He has no choice, because all of them will die. That's how dire this circumstance is. One other thing, though, what he sends back, I just want to look back to Vayeshev again, and the sale of Joseph. So we had, remember, they sat down to a meal. His brothers, looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilad, bearing gum and balm and ladanum to be taken to Egypt, right? And so it's not, there's also honey here and pistachios and almonds, but there is this sense, again, of a kind of replaying. This is exactly the produce that the Ishmaelites were bringing. Okay, so they take the gift, and they took double the money as well as Benjamin, and they made their way to Egypt, presenting themselves to Joseph. And Joseph saw Benjamin with them. He said to his house steward, take the men into the house, slaughter and prepare an animal for the men will dine with me at noon. So this is a very different reception he's giving them now. He sees ostensibly the proof that they were not spies. And the man did as Joseph said. He brought the men to Joseph's house, but they were frightened at being brought into Joseph's. So this is now not just, him sitting in reception in a place where all these people are coming to buy grain. They're taking him into his private home. This is the house of the second greatest man in Egypt. And they're frightened. And they say it must be because of the money replaced in our bags the first time that we have been brought inside as a pretext to attack us, seize us as slaves with our pack animals. Now, this doesn't seem plausible because they had volunteered to be slaves. And he was the one who said, no, just leave one of you. But they don't understand it. Why should they be treated so well? Why should they be in the circumstances? So they go up to Joseph's house steward and speak to him at the entrance to the house. If you please, my lord, we came down once before to procure food. But when we arrived at the night encampment, we opened our bags. There was each one's money in the mouth of his bag, our money in full. So we have brought it back with us. And we have brought down with us other money to procure food. We do not know who put the money in our bags. And the steward says, all is well with you. Do not be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, must have put treasure in your bags. I got your payment, right? He says, and he brings out Shimon, right? So now this is really weird, right? What? And he said, God must have done it. So increasingly, you can just think about how disoriented brothers are, one thing after another. The money in their bags coming into Joseph's house, being told not to worry, which of course just makes them more and more worried, right? And then he brings them into the house, gives them water to bathe their feet, provided food for their animals, and they lay out their gifts to await Joseph's arrival at noon, for they heard they were to dine there. And when Joseph came home, they presented him with the gifts they had brought, bowing before him to the ground, again, bowing, again, the dream being fulfilled. He greets them and says, how is your aged father of whom you spoke? Is he still in good health? There we see, and this is a change. Now they've come, they brought Benjamin. Now he's willing to have them in the house. He seems to have softened, and he wants to know about their father. And he says, it is well with your servant, our father. He's still in good health. And again, they bow. Looking about, he saw his brothers Benjamin, his mother's son, and says, is this the younger brother you have spoke to me about? And he went on, may God be gracious to you, my boy. And then Joseph hurries out because he's overcome with feelings towards his brother and was at the verge of tears. He went into a room and wept there. So this is a different, right? The first weeping, you have a sense, is these are the ones who did this to me, and it's all coming back, and I'm remembering this horrible thing they did. Here, he is being reunited with his only full brother, who he must have worried about and wondered what could have happened to him. And so he goes and he weeps. Joseph is a person overcome by emotion. There's nothing stoic about him. He washes his face. He reappears now in control of himself, gives the order, serve the meal. And they served him by himself and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with them by themselves, because the Egyptians could not dine with the Hebrews since they would be abhorrent to the Egyptians. So exactly what is the nature of, I mean, Joseph by himself makes sense. You know, he's not going to be familiar with these refugees come for food. Why not with the Egyptians? One speculation is that they serve lamb, that uh, and it's not clear to me why that would be, but they would be eating lamb, and then the Egyptians can't eat lamb. It's offensive to them. That's why Joseph later on will tell them to not to say when they say they're shepherds, to tell them to go off and live somewhere far from the Egyptians. So there's some plausibility to it. It may just be pure prejudice that they're not going to eat with these people. At any rate, then they're seated by Joseph's direction from the oldest in the order of his seniority to the youngest in the order of his youth, and they look on in astonishment. Again, how could that be? How could he know who was the firstborn and the secondborn and the thirdborn and so on? So they're really creeped out. Portions are served to them from his table. This reminds me of a Hasidic tish, where a Hasidic Rebbe, there would be one of the things that they did, some of them anyway, was that they would have their Hasidim, their followers, and they would have them to a meal, which was called a tish. And the Rebbe would get the food, and then he would give from his food to his Hasidim, right? And that would be prized because it came from him. Here, Joseph is feeding them, as it were, off of his plate. Portions are served. Benjamin's portion was several times that of everyone else, and they drank with him. So here, if Joseph is testing his brothers, and I think he is, he's showing exactly the same favoritism to his brother as his father showed to him. He's giving more, much more. And the question is, how do the brothers respond? In Hebrew it says they drank their fill with him. If you look at the Hebrew, v'yishtu, v'yishkaru imo. They drank and they became drunk with him. Right? It's much stronger. So they seem to have accepted this. There isn't a sense of why, how, unless maybe they're just so creeped out that they gotta get drunk. But I think it's the former rather than the latter. We're up to 44 questions, comments before they go home now. And it happens again. Anything at all? Yeah, so.
The fact that they were astonished when he put them in the order of their birth, you'd think that they would, they would already know the fact that Joseph was their brother.
Yeah, I think it's simply inconceivable to them that their brother, who they don't know what happened, but it seems to have been sold as a slave, could possibly, I mean, how could that happen that he is now in this place as second only to Pharaoh? And remember, he's not even speaking in Egyptian through an interpreter. It seems uncanny, but I don't think they would necessarily. They are convinced that Joseph is gone. They seem to be convinced of it. Their father seems to be convinced of it. It just doesn't. I don't think it. Sometimes also you see someone in a different context and you just don't recognize them. I've had this experience of like being in the supermarket and seeing my doctor. That, I mean, he says hi, and I'm like, who is this? I mean, no, it's true. He was his brother, not this kind of, 10-minute appointment periodically. But still, I don't find it really inconceivable. So we're going to pick up now with 44, unless there's anything else.
Rabbi,
Yes.
excuse me. But what Saul just asked you, where it doesn't say that Joseph told him where to sit. I mean, is it possible that, I don't know what the Hebrew says, that someone said sit according to your birthright, according to your age or whatever?
I don't think so.
Where is it? Doesn't say that Joseph told him how to sit.
They were seated by his direction.
Oh, I didn't see that.
So not that you imagine, he says to his major domo, all right, put him over there and put him over there and so on. So yeah, and that's why they are astonished, right? That they should be put in this order. Anyway,
Thank you.
sure. Okay, so I am rushing a bit today. You'll forgive me. I do want us to finish, and we have 6 more chapters and another 2 weeks. So we will plow ahead. He instructed his house steward as follows: feed the men, fill the man's bags with food as much as they can carry. Put the money back in the mouth of each bag. Put my silver goblet in the mouth of the bag of the youngest one, together with his money for the rations. Of course, the youngest one is Benjamin. With the first light of morning, the men were sent off with their animals. They had just left the city and not gone far when Joseph said to his steward, up, go after the men. When you overtake them, say to them, why did you repay good with evil? Is it the very one? It is the very one from which my master drinks and which he uses for divination. It is a wicked thing that you did. So the reference here to this cup is first that it's something that Joseph uses to drink from, and perhaps they've seen that. One imagines that it's rather an elegant cup, perhaps has jewels on it. It's, a cup befitting him. And then he uses it for divination. He's able to see things. And this sort of also is sort of creepy, but this kind of reinforces the idea he seated them, right? He is able to divine things. So if they said to him, why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything of the kind. Here we brought money to you from the land of Canaan, the money we found in the mouths of our bags. How could we have stolen any silver or gold from the master's house? In other words, look, we got this money. We thought we weren't entitled to it. So we brought it back. So why would we steal a cup? We're not that kind of people. And remember that they said again and again when they were accused of being spies, we're honest people, we're honest men. This is an argument which is also often used in rabbinic literature. It's called the kol vachomer. How much more so? If we returned the silver to you, how much more so wouldn't we have stolen this? Right? So they're making a case, and then they say, whoever of our servants is found shall die, the rest of us will become slaves. So they are convinced of their innocence. We wouldn't do this. And they say this thing, not knowing, of course, that it's in not only among them, but in Benjamin's bag. They are condemning him unknowingly to death. And this is very reminiscent, of course, of what Joseph himself said when Laban came after him, and said he accused him of stealing the household gods. And Joseph says, we didn't steal them. You can look. If you find them, you'll be whoever I think he says whoever finds them will die, right? Whoever with whom you find them will die. Very similar to this. In that case, they don't get found because you remember Rachel says she has her period and she's sitting on top of them, right? But so this sort of again reminds us back to the earlier narratives. Each one hastens to lower his bag to the ground. They're happy. They want to do this. They want to show. And each one opens his bag and he searches, beginning with the oldest, ending with the youngest, and we get this sense of suspense. And they rend, and the goblet turns up in Benjamin's bag. At this, they rend their clothing, each reloaded his pack animal, and they returned to the city. So this is, of course, classic sign of mourning. They rend their clothing, they know they've condemned their brother to death. When Judah and his brothers re-enter the house of Joseph, who was still there, they throw themselves on the ground, and Joseph says, "What is this deed you have done? Do you not know that a man like me practices divination?" Right? So again, you can't hide anything from me. Of course, it's a little inconsistent with the idea that he could have mistook them for spies, right? But that's water under the bridge. And Judah is again the spokesman for the group. And I think that all of this is what's driving my response to Saul when he said, "How did you know that he was the leader?" And we see in this later narrative, he clearly is the leader. What can we say to our Lord? How can we plead? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered the crime of your servants. Now, what crime are they talking about? Certainly not the goblet. Right? Here we are then, slaves of my Lord, the rest of us as much as he who is in possession of the goblet. But he replies, "Far be it from me to act thus. Only he who is in possession of the goblet was found shall be my slave. The rest of you go back." He just wants his brother Benjamin. All of this was an attempt to get Benjamin away from the brothers to be with him. And I'm going to go, how much time do we have? Yeah, we have a few minutes. So I want to, because I want to at least look at Judas' leap. We're on page 274, verse 18, as we come to a new parsha by Yigash. And now Judah says to him, "Please, my Lord, yet let your servant appeal to my Lord. Do not be impatient with your servant, you who are equal with Pharaoh. My Lord asked his servants, 'Have you a father or another brother?' We told my Lord, 'We have an old father. There is a child of his old age, the youngest. His full brother is dead, so that he alone is left.'" And here now we have this statement. Before it was simply "he is not." Now we get the idea that they actually think he is dead, so that he alone is left of his mother, and his father dotes on him, right? He's the last one from Rachel. "Then you said to your servants, 'Bring him down to me that I may set eyes on him.' We said to my Lord, 'The boy cannot leave his father. If he were to leave him, his father would die.' Then you said to your servants, 'Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, do not let me see your face.' When we came back to your servant, my father, we reported my Lord's words. Later, my father said, 'Go and procure some food from us.' We answered, 'We cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us can we go down. For we may not show our faces to the man unless our youngest brother is with us.' Your servant, my father, said, 'As you know, my wife bore me 2 sons.'" By the way, that's a very strong statement, right? My wife, meaning my real wife, bore me 2 sons. One is gone from me, and I said, "Alas, he was torn by a wild beast, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and he meets with disaster, you will send my white head down to Sheol." And now Joseph has been told what his father thinks. Any questions about why his father didn't look for him, why his father sent him to this dangerous assignment, knowing that his brothers had all this enmity towards him. Now he knows what his father thought. And that, I think, for Joseph changes things somewhat also. Now, if I come to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, since his life is so bound up with his, when he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die, and your servants will send the white head of your servant, our father, to Shaul. So he says, this will cause his death. He will die of this broken heart. Now your servant has pledged himself for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, I will stand guilty before my father forever. He says, I made myself a surety. Therefore, please let your servant remain as a slave to my Lord instead of the boy. Let the boy go back to his brothers. For how can I go back to my father unless the boy is with me? Let me not be a witness to the woe that would overcome my father. And I am going to stop here because what we're going to see is really the dramatic denouement of this story as Joseph will finally reveal himself to his brothers. And we'll do that next time as we'll pick up with chapter 45. Any questions? Anything at all? Comments? Okay, so as I mentioned at the outset, we have 2 classes left to finish this story before Shavuot. I want to do it if at all possible, and we will end there. If I'm not able to do it, then there will be one additional class after Shavuot to make sure that we have gone all the way through the book of Genesis. Next year, I intend to continue teaching, but to take a different tact, as I mentioned to some of you earlier, and that is to focus on individuals rather than the text as a whole. Principally to focus on Moses and Elijah in the Bible, and also literature, and probably 1 or 2 other figures as well. We'll look at a lot of text, but we won't look at it in context. We'll look at it relative to those individuals. One other thing I want to mention, one of my students for years no longer comes because I always did this from 11 to 12. I shifted to 11:30 to 12:30, and she has an ongoing commitment. She asked if I would consider going back to 11:30 next year. Think about it. I'll ask again. I'm not necessarily married to going back to it. It's just, if it works for everybody, I can arrange that. So, but I'll bring that up again. At any rate, it's always a pleasure. And happy Lag BaOmer, because it's the end of this week, the 33rd day of the Omer, a bit of rejoicing in the midst of the Omer. I think it's Friday, Thursday night and Friday. And I hope to see you as we continue Joseph's saga next week. Have a great week, everybody.
Shavuot
Thank-
Tov.
Thank you. You too, Herbert.